Hello, hello. This is the my artifact episode number 3963. Today's date is March 25, 2026. It's been almost like a night at 9:49 p.m. All right, let's just jump into the question. Let's go. All right. So the question is, how does our system prepare student for future shaped by automation, climate change, demographic shift, and rapid technology change? Okay. Okay, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This question is actually about Indian education system. Okay. Why am I asking this question to myself? I want to become a education minister of India in the future, and before I want to become, I want to understand that ki everything regarding about like what could be possible challenge would I face when I will become that particular person. What kind of like a reforms will I able to do, and as also is this thing ground reality of education system. I wanted to know more aware of this system, so that's why I'm actually asking this question to myself. All right. Now regarding about this question is a kind of like a bit more difficult to kind of like assembly understand, but it's not. Let me kind of like a simplify this question. First of all, let me kind of like tell you question again. The question is that how well does our education, how well does our system prepared student for future shaped by automation, climate change, demographical shift, and rapid technological movement or change? Let me explain this question in even more simple language. The question says that is the Indian education system and college actually teaching student what they need to survive and succeed in their future job, like automation, climate change, demographical shift, rapid tech change? Okay. So basically this thing I have to ask this question to myself that ki if I will become that particular person and I wanted to change the education system. Before I wanted to change this education system, I have to be asked this question to myself that is the system that you are think are like a can that system able to be kind of like a simply like a like a teach the student a new technology, new reforms? That's a really very important question. Okay. So let me kind of like tell you what is exactly my idea, what is exactly my things, what exactly that I wanted to do. Okay. So basically is this thing, my entire education system reforms are based on one single application called Gurukul application. By the way, this entire reform called Gurukul program. Okay. Now, what is exactly Gurukul program? What exactly is this thing? So, Gurukul program is a kind of like simply a single app. That's it. There is no kind of like a very crazy amount of thinking and that and that. Okay. So basically, in this particular application, student are actually enrolled in that application from standard 5. Okay. I making sure that from first standard to fourth standard, they are kind of like a teaching by kind of like a assembly much more conventional by teacher point of perspective or teachers way and things and that and that. Okay. Gurukul program is a kind of like assembly execute since fifth standard. Okay. Now in the fifth standard, when the student are kind of like a went into the fifth standard, they will kind of like get the tablet, okay, yeah, from the government, from education department. And in that tablet they have app called Gurukul app. Now in the Gurukul app they have to be kind of like a enroll and started doing kind of like a learning on that app. In this app there are so many things, okay, you don't need to buy any kind of like a textbooks or any kind of like a book, nothing really at all. I'm not really sure at the moment. Probably is this thing, like what exactly what I'm thinking is that na ki my application is a kind of like a thing is that na ki student would kind of like a do the homework on that application every single day, okay, yeah, regarding about every subject, everything, okay. System will understand every student regarding about how good is that student, regarding about every subjects and things and that, okay, yeah. And the system is a kind of like a try to understand student even more better, okay, and try to kind of like a give them even more difficult task, so that that particular student would kind of like a equip with more knowledge, more kind of like some information and things and that, okay. In my Gurukul program it doesn't really have any kind of like exam, nothing really at all, just this application. Important thing is that ki student should supposed to be come into that application and they will kind of like do their homework every single day, that's it. In return, when they will kind of like do their homework, they will kind of like get some sort of score, okay, yeah. When they get some sort of score, that score is kind of like a publicly available. That means a teacher, parents and as well as the recruiter would kind of like see your score too, okay. So what does it means? It means that ki if you are constantly do your homework on that application, okay, your score will be improve. Because of your score will be improved, you are kind of like getting higher chances to get a job. How? Because of that, if you are kind of like really good at something and the recruiter always find such a talent, they need a kind of like such a talent that kind of like somebody really good at mathematics and things and that. If you are really good at mathematics, then they will find out, okay, this particular person is really good at mathematics, so they will kind of like contact you and say this thing, would you kind of like do a job with us and things and that, and you will get the, yeah. But like basically this thing, why does kind of like a recruiter will kind of like believe in this scoreboard, okay, yeah. Well, yeah, like basically this thing now, why, that is a really good question. Why this kind of like somebody recruiter will kind of like believe on scoreboard? Because I think that na ki this is the only scoreboard are kind of like actually implemented by student and actually upgraded by student every single day, okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing that na ki recruiter are kind of like giving your job based on how good is your resume and things and that, but that resume does not kind of like simply give you that much kind of like a credibility. Like a recruiter doesn't really know about your entire thing. Probably they might gonna know your qualification and things and that, but they don't know your personality and things and that. Gurukul app is kind of like giving everything. Like basically recruiter will found everything regarding about student, what is exactly his personality, what is exactly his kind of like somebody aggression, everything. But how does Gurukul program will kind of like understand that? Okay, Gurukul app is not just kind of like a typical app where it kind of like asks bunch of question and you have to select the answer and things and that. No, my app Gurukul app is kind of like a somebody runs on algorithm, kind of like figure it out who you are and what kind of like a person you are, not just kind of like asking question and giving the answer and things and that. No, it's not. It is that too, but it is also kind of like somebody understand that ki how good you are, how good is your kind of like somebody speaking skills, or kind of like somebody visual learning or logic or reasoning or kind of like a bunch of things, okay. As well as a kind of like a Gurukul is kind of like based on, like it takes the information from teachers. Like basically it's this thing that ki if you did kind of like a project and the teacher will kind of like a review that ki, okay, this person is kind of like a really good or not, and that teacher kind of like a give you remark on that app, so that you will kind of like increase the score, as well as how good is your exam, like how good your kind of like a sports, how good is your kind of like a doing kind of like a simply exercise and things and that. These details are also kind of like a simply given by the coach. Like a coach is kind of like a simply give you kind of like a things and that. Coach find out that ki, okay, you are kind of like a being consistent regarding about exercise. They also kind of like a give you remark and things and that. So basically it's this thing that Gurukul scoreboard is a kind of like a score that came from everybody, from teacher to application to coaches to everything. And since then it kind of like simply give you a better understanding regarding about person. That's why it understands student much more better. Okay, because of this app, this scoreboard kind of like give you the exact reflection of what you are. The recruiter will kind of like believe in this thing, because these things are not actually exist. Okay, yeah. So recruiter will find out, okay, this particular person is kind of like a really good in mathematics. He also really good in kind of like a some sports and things and that. And as also this particular person is also kind of like a live in my city. Like probably that particular person is kind of like a company is actually from Nashik, and this particular person is also from the Nashik too. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, na, ki this actually happened much more better. Okay, yeah, so that recruiter will find the talent very easily, very fast, and as well as kind of like a somebody kind of like a particular student will kind of like a get a job. Okay, yeah. So this is what actually happened. One thing is that in my Gurukul application, in my Gurukul program, there is no exam, there is nothing really at all. Okay, yeah, just a kind of like a somebody solve your homework and that's it. Okay, yeah, the effort defined by consistent. Like, are you consistent enough? Are you kind of like a willing to spend every single day to do your homework and things and that application? That will kind of like a defined by how credible you are. Because in the conventional method of education, they are kind of like a focus on impact, like exam and things and that, which cannot determine the person credibility. Because most of people are kind of like a simply learning by just, they are not understanding, they just kind of like a learn and things, and they just, yeah, like a rote learning. Okay, yeah. So that is not really good, because growth is actually come from consistent. And this is the things that I wanted to kind of like teach the student. Be consistent regarding about their work and things and that. Okay, now this is the one thing. Now another thing is that is my education is a kind of like a provided the education regarding about new technology, new kind of like a things. Well, yeah, that is true, because my education is not a kind of like a textbooks. My education is not a kind of like a simply a book. My education is a display, a kind of like a application. Okay, yeah. Like, let me kind of like a give you context. A kind of like a book, whatever the word is actually written, it written for rest of the lifetime. It does not change. Okay, yeah. And as well as because of the kind of like a, we are living in such a world where technologies are actually shifting so rapidly that it's kind of like a somebody is this thing, we need a kind of like a somebody such a curriculum that can change very rapidly too. Obviously I cannot able to be change the syllabus every single week or every single month, right? So how do we supposed to kind of like change the entire thing? Like application, like app is a kind of like a really much more better way, so that every student will kind of like a getting very latest information regarding about whatever actually happening in the world. Because the implementation from changing the world to implement that education, implement that thing in education is far more easier in the application, instead of kind of like a changing the entire curriculum syllabus and kind of like a textbooks and things and that, which is kind of like a far more difficult. Okay, yeah. So basically this thing, even if the kind of like a technology is actually shifting from one to another and things and that, my student will always get the latest education or latest information regarding about the new technology in their app. Okay, yeah. Like basically it's this thing that ki, if I want that ki my students should supposed to learn about large language model. Okay, yeah. So basically I have to be kind of like a train them slowly by kind of like a, this is a large language model, you have to do this, you have to do that, kind of like a solve some sort of couple of exam, so resolve a couple of kind of like a homework regarding about this LLM, and they will kind of like some like equipped with knowledge regarding about that. And if they are kind of like a continue and consistent regarding about this thing, I will gonna create army of people who could kind of like a somebody create really good at creating or kind of like a making engineer of large language model or things and that. So basically it's this thing na ki, like if I have this app, I'm not only control the student, but as well as I also control that what kind of like a student, what they will gonna learn. Okay, yeah. And if I control that thing, then I would kind of like give them a proper direction regarding about what they should supposed to be learn and what they not. Okay, yeah. As also is this thing, this is a kind of like a government program now. And as also government really required a kind of like a, let's just say a government required a kind of like a doctors. Okay, yeah, because they have lack of it. They don't really have that many doctors. So what do I supposed to do is that ki let them push little bit of further regarding about medical education and things and that. If I push little bit further, after 20 year, I will gonna create army of doctors. Yeah, literally army of doctors, like thousands of doctor. Okay, so this is kind of like one single shift can change everything. So one app not only control the student as well as what they will gonna learn, as well as what kind of like a somebody government really required, what kind of like a people that they really required. Like basically is this thing, every government really required a kind of like a somebody student who are really expert in STEM subjects. What's a STEM subject? Science, technology, mathematics, and engineering. These are kind of like simply 4 subjects every government wants that key, we want the students from that particular field. Okay, yeah. So if I push them little bit, I will kind of like create army of those people who are kind of like really good at STEM subjects. Obviously this thing, every student are kind of like somebody wanted to know what, like wanted to kind of like get the information what he want. Like basically this thing, a particular person loves history and things and that kind of like a somebody system understand that this particular person is really good in history and he wanted to continue his career in history and things and that. So basically basically algorithm does not really push them away from their history and kind of like a focus on STEM. No, they kind of like let them focus on history too. Okay, yeah. It's a kind of like a things that na ki algorithm kind of like a pushing such a people, they don't know what they wanted in their life. So kind of like a give them a proper direction. This is kind of like a thing. If the people already knew what they wanted and they are constantly kind of like doing the things that they love, obviously algorithm doesn't really kind of like only poke them regarding about that. No, they will kind of like continue learning the things that they wanted to learn and things and that. Right? So this is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, yeah. So basically one application will kind of like simply getting new technology, very latest and very widely, and kind of like a spread across all around the world, all around the country. Okay, I don't have to kind of like wait for distribution and kind of like a printing textbooks and things and that. Nothing really at all. Just one click and I will kind of like simply send the kind of like simply very new technology and new innovation implement in our education system. Right? Yeah. And as also regarding about job, same thing. Just being consistent, increase your score. Kind of like a recruiter will find out you are kind of like a credible enough regarding about this. They will kind of like offer you job. Also, again, my education system is not meant to be stopped. Yeah. Like there is no graduation. There is nothing at all. Like basically, even after you get a job, if you've been continue regarding about consistent effort, consistent kind of like a only doing your homework every single day on this application, okay, yeah, you will kind of like increasing score. And if you increase the score, obviously you will attract the even more higher recruiter. Okay, yeah. And when you attract even more higher recruiter, your chances will get kind of like a job is kind of like increased too. Okay, yeah. Like you will have a kind of like somebody decide that key which job should I wanted to do. Like a one recruiter kind of like a give you job about like a basically $10,000 of salary, and another recruiter kind of like a give you job of almost like a $50,000 of salary. So you have to decide that ki, which one should I want. So basically your credibility is always going to increase if you kind of like continue doing this kind of like continue improving your score and things and that and that. Okay, yeah, right. So this is what it is. Now another thing, the question actually very much essential regarding about that key automation, and like basically these are kind of like a very much essential regarding about the concept regarding about the automation, climate change, demographic shift, and rapid tech change. Okay, let's talk about the automation. Now, what is actually automation? Automation is a kind of like a simply a new technology regarding about that key. How do we supposed to be automate stuff? Okay, self-driving car, like software coding agents. Okay, AI. These are kind of like a simply self-learning kind of like a machine can do the work very efficiently, and it will gonna happen much more in the future. We might see a kind of like a driverless car, we might see a kind of like a driverless truck in the future. Like within a 20-year, things might be shifted so rapidly that we just can't even kind of like imagine the world that we are. Okay, yeah. And that is called automation. This actually happened in automation. Now basically this thing, now obviously automation will kind of like take so many jobs, driver's job and things and that and that. But obviously there are so many people are really required to kind of like train that automation. Like basically this thing that automation does not really happen by just like just blue in the air. No, it will kind of like happen so many ways and things and that and that. Automation are kind of like a somewhat something kind of like a trained by the humans and things and that and that. Now how do I supposed to kind of like a train my student? Obviously I have to be implement that subject in my application, roll out to the kind of like a millions of students. That's it. Same thing happened with the climate change. Now basically climate change is a kind of like a assembly of factor that kind of like a matter to most of people. Now what is actually climate change? Obviously in the future student are kind of like a breathing a such a air that might be a toxic or might be polluted and things and that and that. Now basically is this thing the world that we are kind of like a let them stay, which is kind of like a very much toxic. So basically it is really essential so that it is my responsibility to kind of like make them aware of that key, what kind of like assembly effect of you if you do some sort of thing that impact on the climate change. Like basically it's this thing that key, if you wanted to buy a car, buy electric car. But electric car does it kind of like a help. Like electric car is also kind of like a run on electricity, and electricity run on electric plant, like coal plant or thermal plant and things like that, which also create the pollution, right? So basically how do we supposed to manage this thing? Well, it will gonna manage. Okay, yeah. The basically is this thing that the electric car is not kind of like simply creating pollution, it create control pollution. Now what is actually control pollution? Okay, yeah. The control pollution or control chaos, I will not going to talk about that particular thing because it's a very different subject. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing that I wanted to aware my student regarding about their new technology and new climate change and things and that. I also think that like it's just my thought process, I'm not really sure will it be happen or not, but every student should supposed to be plant a tree. Okay, yeah. And it kind of like assembly like a plant a tree at your home and things and that. That tree is kind of like a represent you. Okay, yeah. Like it is your responsibility to kind of like a give them kind of like assembly water or things and that. Okay, yeah. As also is this thing that in the future a school should supposed to be kind of like a do a tree plantation program, as well as every student should supposed to be kind of like assembly involved in that program. And it is really one job to do is that keep plant the trees. Okay, yeah. And as also is this thing that key aware regarding about the pollution and things and that climate change and things and that. Okay, yeah. Because having a kind of like a awareness which would be kind of like a much more better regarding about that key, much more regarding about that key what kind of like a simply like a future that they want regarding about the healthcare, regarding about the pollution, regarding about the climate change and things and that. Like we have a lot of ideas regarding about this thing, but still is this thing ki regarding about that probably is better to kind of like let them decide. It is my responsibility to kind of like aware of them. Okay, kind of like make them kind of like breathe in such a air that kind of like a bit more like a healthy and things and that. But is this thing ki I also understand that ki like a awareness is very much essential. at least. Like basically is this thing, instead of kind of like a something that key stopping, instead of kind of like a somebody that key creating less pollution, like basically stopping the pollution, kind of like a, we should suppose focus on create less pollution. Like a, if you kind of like a go to the market, then do not buy, do not kind of like a force, do not kind of like a take a plastic bag or things like that, or do not throw a kind of like a somebody plastic wafer somewhere at all. Like basically some sort of kind of like a somebody important information that we have, like a do not throw a garbage at somewhere, put the garbage in kind of like a somebody like a plastic bag or something, like a dustbin or things and that. Do small tiny things might gonna impact a lot. And this is kind of like awareness that I wanted to provide to the student. Now regarding about the demographic shift, now what's a demographic shift? India has a massive number of young people. It is a system good enough to kind of like give them all them jobs and good life. Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. Now regarding about this question, I'm kind of like a bit more confused regarding about that. Okay, because my Gurukul program is actually be more focused regarding about that ki finding excellence and things and that. Okay, but also is this thing na ki there are almost like a 1.2 population, 1.2 billion people population of the India and things and that. In that 1.2 sorry, in the 1.4 billion people, almost like a 700 million people are children's. Okay, so probably is this thing, how do I supposed to kind of like give them jobs to all 700 million students, right? Well, that's a big thing. Okay, but is this thing na ki, like basically is this thing na ki my job is not to give them a job, like my job, like basically my education system is not to kind of like somebody give them a job. No, it's not. Like basically is this thing, my education system is kind of like a make them better regarding about their thought process. They are kind of like somebody equipped with lot of knowledge and things and that. And because of whatever the knowledge they consume, they kind of like somebody understand, they will kind of like create the job, or they will kind of like find the job. Like it's not really my responsibility to kind of like somebody find them a job. Okay, yeah, it is my responsibility to kind of like make them better regarding about knowledge and things and that. Because let me tell you one thing now, no, like in this world, no one kind of like get money for free. Like you put the effort, you get the value. That's it. Okay, yeah, if that particular person is actually consistent enough regarding about everything, and he's kind of like putting the effort every single day, obviously he will gonna get a job and things and that. Like why do I supposed to kind of like give a job to people who are kind of like lazy and things and that, right? Simple thing, you put the effort, get a job, simple as that. Another thing is that rapid tech change. Yeah, rapid technological changes actually happened regarding about automation, AI, and lot of stuff. Regarding about this information, as I already mentioned, my education is kind of like a based on application. Okay, yeah, app. An app is a kind of like a something very easy to kind of like a roll out to the millions of people with one go. So yeah, so this is how is my application, and this I will gonna solve this problem in that way. All right, this is it. I have to end here. Thank you.